Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week, we focus on China's national games, the multi-sport event held every 4 years in this country. What should we keep our eyes on for the games? How is this edition different from others? To unpack the questions, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. All right, the 15th National Games of China is underway in Guangdong, Hong Kong and Macao, and it's the first time that the game is held in 3 different locations.
Yeah.
And we've already seen some early action so far. Tian Yu, anything you look forward to seeing at the games?
Well, yeah, honestly, I've been really into baseball lately. And yeah, I've been following the MLB World Series between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. And it's been super fun to watch, I must say. So for this year's national games, I'm actually most excited about the baseball games. Baseball is kind of a niche sport in China. Not a lot of people play it or even know the rules clearly. It's got a slower pace compared to other games like basketball and football. And the equipment's not cheap. And we don't have that many standard baseball stadiums across the whole country. But recently, I feel like things are changing in China. At last year's Under-23 Baseball World Cup, China actually finished 4th. And that's our best result at that tournament. And also this year, we've even got our own professional baseball league ready to kick off, which is a big deal. On social media, I've seen way more people talking about the World Series lately, which shows the sports is actually starting to catch on in China. And just last weekend, I was at Chaoyang Park in Beijing. I saw that they've got batting cages and spots for people to try baseball, which really shows the sport is really catching on. Baseball is actually quietly growing in the country, and since the sport's coming back to the Olympics in LA 2028, I feel like all these efforts are setting the stage for China to make a real mark in international baseball.
Right, the National Games sports program is consistent with the Olympics, so that's why baseball is now part of the games, and it's growing very fast in China. Brandon, any expectations from your side for China's national games?
I think coming from, the mindset of someone that is not Chinese or based in China, something for me that I think is very interesting about the national games in China in particular is that, for a lot of Westerners, for example, that don't really see Chinese athletes performing on a regular basis unless we're watching the Olympics, something like this is very interesting to look out for because a lot of the times we think, where do these talents come from? Like where do these 14-year-old divers come from? Where do these incredible swimmers come from? And we just see them at the Olympics and we're like, how and where? We've never heard of these guys. And all of a sudden they're breaking records, they're winning gold medals. And we don't really understand how China's able to, particularly at the Olympics, dominate so many sports across such a wide range of different, athletic abilities and, different sporting codes. And it's, that level of depth has always, I think, amazed many countries, particularly here in South Africa. We're always just kind of blown away by how, China shows up at Olympic events and new stars always emerge and we're never quite sure where they emerge from. And this is one of these events where they emerge from, right? I think one of the most important elements of the national games is, the talent pipeline and selection. So, the games are where emerging national team candidates face top domestic rivals under big event pressure. So this is where a lot of the talent identification takes place. And beyond that, it's also where it gives young and emerging talents from, provinces and cities all across China the chance to compete on a very massive stage, not quite as big as the Olympics, of course, but, cameras are on them, national attention is on them. And some of these athletes are, teenagers and have never competed on television or have never competed against, other provinces or other cities. So it's also a chance for talent that's been identified to actually, for selectors to see if they are able to also showcase their talents in front of a massive audience or, to be able to compete against other talents from around the country, which will hopefully then translate into, gold medals and top level performances against athletes from around the world. I think for me, the most exciting thing is to see who is going to be the next big star in the swimming
Hmm.
pool, off the diving board, on the
Yeah.
badminton courts, on the on the gymnastics. But just identifying those talents that when the next Olympics comes around, we can be like, okay, that person's going to absolutely destroy international competition. That's going to be the next Simone Biles in Olympics, or that's going to be the next 14-year-old Chinese diving sensation. So I think for me, that's the most exciting thing. Where is the talent going to come from? And can that talent then go on to represent China at something like the Olympics and be the next Chinese star that breaks world records, dominates international competition, and claims multiple gold medals?
Right. The National Games definitely offers, a potential preview of
Yeah.
future Olympic champions. I mean, this is where these emerging talents prove they can compete against those established stars. And maybe, I don't know, in 3 years, some of them might shine at the Los Angeles Olympics. We don't know.
Yeah.
And for me, my biggest expectations must be those high competition level sports at the national games like table tennis and
Yeah.
diving. It's often said that in these sports at the national games, winning a national game gold is harder than winning an Olympic gold.
Yeah.
For instance, in table tennis, the world's top 10 players have like 6, 7 Chinese athletes. At the Olympics, not all of them have the chances to compete at the Olympics because of the limited entry quotas, but at the national games, they are all there.
Yeah.
And they are not only fighting for, glory, personal glory, but for their provincial teams
Yeah.
and their chance in the national teams in the future. And they are quite familiar with each other. Many of them have grown up training together, even living together since childhood. So there's no secrets between them. The pride, the pressure is huge, and it's deeply personal.
Definitely.
Maybe at the Olympics, it's more about the global prestige, but the national games, I would say, is more unique and has this more intensity vibe between
Yeah.
athletes. I mean, many Olympic champions end up with nothing here. And apart from diving and table tennis, the national games also features many other Olympic sports. You can see it as a mini Olympics within one country. But when we take our scope out of China, I think of, the Commonwealth Games, the European Games as comparison, but I don't see many single countries host such massive multi-sport events, maybe except India. So, Brandon, are there similar national or regional comprehensive sports games elsewhere in the world that remind you when you think of the national games of China?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned India. That's the closest that I can think of that comes to a similar sort of scale when it comes to a national or regional comprehensive games like we're seeing in China. But I think there's very few, maybe a handful of countries around the world that are able to match the scale that we're seeing in China on such a regular and consistent and successful basis. When I look at South Africa again, of course, we don't have the same numbers in terms of population size in China. What we can do is we can host something similar to the national games, but for one sport, not for multi-level competition. So we do have, national and inter-provincial competitions for rugby, for example. So in terms of South Africa, where we have a similar level of talent identification and also interprovincial rivalry has to do with a lot of our rugby competition. So, for example, at a school level, we've got the Craven Week where kids ranging from 16 to 18 represent their province, and the rivalry between provinces there is incredibly strong. And the two provinces that get to the final, whoever wins the Craven Week and then is deemed the best schoolboy rugby province in the country. Which and the battle for those titles are incredibly important. But more importantly than that, national team coaches are already for the national rugby team are already identifying 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old talents that are signing, pre-professional contracts, are being looked at to stay in a specific position, that is related to rugby, are then mentored and groomed in that position so that when they turn 18, they're ready to already sign a professional contract. They're ready to join a provincial union, and they are already starting to play professional rugby, and then are being fast-tracked to the national team. But again, that's only for one specific sport. Where I think it's unique in China is that because it's such a massive country and there's such a talent pool for a variety of sports, they're able to hold a competition like the national games where you've got the same level of competition like we do for interprovincial rugby competitions in South Africa, but you've got it across a multitude of sports. And I think China's in a unique position where they're able to do that. I guess the United States can also compete in a certain extent like that, where they've got massive interstate competitions for a variety of sports, in India and one or two other countries, but I don't think any of those nations match the scale of China when it comes to the amount of competition and high level competition amongst a variety of sports. So I think that's where China's in a very unique position. They've got such a wide talent pool to select from and so much competition at a high level across not just one sport, but dozens of sports.
Right. I think of the NCAA competitions in the US where the university athletes, they compete across different sports and select different emerging stars en route to their professional careers. But it's not on the similar scale as the Olympics. But the national games of China, I guess, is the case. We can make this comparison. So Tianyu, this leads to a very interesting question. Why does China need these massive, national games when its athletes already competing and excel in, the Olympics and other international competitions? We also have single sports championships in China and the national championships across different sports.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something every country does on this scale.
Yeah, I think for a big country like China, it actually makes a lot of sense to have our own national games. Because it's not just about winning medals. It's more like setting a stage for athletes from different provinces to compete, to learn from each other, and to push the overall level of sports across the whole country. So like you guys just have said, I think the national games are part of China's Olympic strategy. Many Olympic champions first made their names at the national games. It's where young athletes get a chance to present themselves, to prove themselves, and to prepare for the international stage. So yeah, in a way, it's like the foundation of our national sports system. Beyond competition, I think these games really help boost local economies. There's even a saying that goes, host a great event, you lift up the whole city. For example, Guangzhou's Tianhe Sports Center was actually built for the 1987 National Games, and it later became a landmark that helped shape the city's CBD area. So every time the National Games moved to a new host city, from places like Jiangsu and Shandong to Tianjin and Shanxi, it brings what we call a sports economy. It improves the infrastructure there, the tourism, and even cultural exchange between different provinces. Is not just about sports, it's about development and also connecting different regions of the whole country. So yeah, of course, on a more grassroots level, having a national event like this actually gets more people involved in sports. So it inspires kids, promotes fitness around the country, and builds that sense of community through competition.
Right. Well, from my side of things, while we focus on the Olympic sports, the National Games also features many traditional sports. That is a window to China's, diverse sports culture. We are talking about sports like wushu and dragon boat racing. And as a Mongolian, I noticed that the Mongolian wrestling is also part of the side events of the National Games this year. For our overseas listeners, this is a fantastic reminder that China's sports culture is very ancient and multifaceted. I guess the National Games is beyond the sports. As you said, it's also related to economy, and it's also about preserving and celebrating the physical heritage and the culture that most of the world never gets to see. All right, before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. Co-host Guangdong won the first diving gold at China's 15th National Games after coming out on top in the women's team event. Olympic champion Chen Yiwen contributed 2 victories alone in the 3-meter springboard and the synchronized 3-meter springboard competitions.
I feel really nervous, and I haven't been so nervous for a long time. Everyone adjusted to their best conditions, and everybody in the team hoped to contribute for the team.
Olympic champion Chuan Hongchan teamed up with new partner Wang Weiying to seal the title for Guangdong with their win in the women's synchronized 10 meters platform. The Chinese Football Association announced that 45-year-old Xiao Jiayi has been appointed as the new head coach of China's men's national football team. Xiao represented China at the 2002 FIFA World Cup and played for several seasons in the German Bundesliga. Xiao took charge of the Chinese Super League side Qingdao West Coast last year. This season, the team currently sits 9th in the CSL. Bayern Munich made it 16 wins from 16 games this season to underline their credentials as early Champions League favorites, beating holders Paris Saint-Germain 2-1 away. Luis Diaz struck twice for Bayern before being sent off for a violent tackle on Achraf Hakimi on the stroke of halftime. Elsewhere, Alex McAllister headed a second-half winner as Liverpool earned a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Real Madrid. Liverpool manager Arne Slot lauded his players' spirited performance.
It's nicer to talk about this if you win, because if you lose, people come up with that I try to find excuses. But a positive set-piece balance is the minimum you need to get a result 9 out of 10 times, and that's what we had today.
Arsenal bagged a 3-0 win over Slavia Prague. The Gunners' Max Downman became the youngest player ever to feature in a Champions League game at 15 years and 308 days. Manchester City climbed to 4th in the Champions League standings after a commanding 4-1 win over Borussia Dortmund. Paris Saint-Germain attacker Desiree Doué won the 2025 Golden Boy Award. Doué beat out a number of nominees including Real Madrid's Arda Güler and Arsenal's Miles Lewis-Skelly. A record over 4,700 runners completed the 2025 Beijing Marathon within 3 hours. Ethiopia's Lemi Berhanu Haile clocked 2 hours, 8 minutes and 10 seconds to defend his title. His compatriot Archinalu Desikinani won women's events. Yannick Sinner is back at world number 1 after winning the Paris Masters. The Italian beat Felix Auger-Aliassime 6-4, 7-6 in the final, and he will now head to the ATP Finals in Turin, top of the rankings.
Another title this year. It has been an amazing year, no matter what comes now in Turin.
The 24-year-old is also the first player to win a Masters title without dropping a set since 2023. Welcome back. This year is historic because Guangdong, Hong Kong and Macau are co-hosting the national games for the first time. Tianyu, you've lived and studied in Hong Kong. You must have had some, first-hand experience of how, sports and lifestyle look there. So what does this partnership mean for regions like Hong Kong and Macau and the whole Greater Bay Area, and anything beyond just the sports?
Well, yes, I actually spent a year in Hong Kong doing my postgraduate studies there. And what really impressed me during the time was how close the connections between cities in the Greater Bay Area are. Because every day you would see people traveling between Hong Kong and cities like Guangzhou, Zhuhai, Shenzhen for work and study. So it really feels like one big community together already. That's why I think it's really meaningful that Hong Kong and Macau are co-hosting this year's national games together with Guangdong for the first time, because it's not just a sports event anymore. It's a chance to bring the whole region even closer together. The Greater Bay Area is actually one of the most dynamic and innovative regions in China, and hosting the games here will only boost that energy. It will encourage more cooperation, not just in sports, but also in business, technology, and culture. And experts have even said that the event will help the three places better integrate their economies and industries. And I've also noticed more athletes from Hong Kong and Macau are making their mark internationally now, and this event will definitely shine a bigger spotlight on them. Beyond Sports is also about showing the unique vibe of the Greater Bay Area. We've noticed the chill lifestyle, the openness, and the creativity of the people here. So yeah, in the end, I think this national games isn't just about winning medals. It's about connection and development and showing the world what the Greater Bay Area is all about.
Right. When I heard the three regions co-hosting the national games, I think of connectivity. For example, listen to this. At this year's national games, road cycling will take place across Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau. Along the over 230-kilometer route, riders will go through 6 cross-border checkpoints, which usually needs, some paperwork for citizens to go through because, Hong Kong and Macau are two special administrative regions, and it requires the exit entry permits for traveling to and from Hong Kong and Macau. But to guarantee smooth cycling competition, organizers have set up the so-called seamless cross-border clearance this year for the national games. During the cycling race, when cyclists pass the border areas, sensors automatically scan their information and allow them to pass through almost, instantly without any stop.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a test ground for this technology to be used more broadly in the future for, normal citizens and travelers.
Definitely.
And that will be massive for convenience for, local citizens and potentially international tourists in the future, right? Where it'll be a lot less complicated and a lot less time consuming for, domestic and international tourists to kind of get through these regions in the future, right? This is a great test for that.
Yeah. And talking about, technology, it has greatly reshaped multi-sports events like the national games. So, Brandon, what specific tech adoption at these national games has really caught your attention? Anything you found from the news?
Yeah, I mean, as we've kind of touched on in previous Sideline podcast episodes when talking about any massive sporting event happening in China, technology kind of plays a part on every stage, right? So I think it started from the torchbearer, right? So the games featured a 5G A-equipped humanoid as a ceremonial torchbearer, which was, a symbolic first showing for robotics and ultra-low latency networks in live ceremonial use. So I think that's an incredible example of framing cutting edge tech as a public spectacle, So I think when we think of tech in China from an outsider's perspective, we always think of China being at the forefront of technological developments, but also usually the first nation to really implement, because, a lot of countries will create tech or come up with new innovative tech solutions, but they don't really use it practically early on, whereas China doesn't seem to have that same concern. They will develop the tech and they think, okay, we're ready to use this tech and we're ready to put it on a national or international stage. And let's show, our people or people around the world that we are, we have this tech and it works. And I think that a lot of these national and international sporting events happening in China are a great platform to showcase a lot of the new technology that's emerging out of China. And like I said, we've seen that at multiple sporting events over the years. I think there's also been a great emphasis on live streaming multi-angle feeds and on-demand replays through 5G infrastructure, which is going to enable richer remote fan engagement and quicker content monetization. Those are very key elements, I think, for the future of sports interaction. I think particularly for younger generations and maybe generations around the world that weren't necessarily invested in traditional style sports viewing. I think the emphasis on this sort of technology might be able to widen the net in terms of sporting fans that could be attracted to sports that maybe weren't in the past or were only, kind of focused on sports that enabled that sort of tech. So I think of esports, for example, and I think that an event like the national games are going to be a great testing ground for future tech that's going to make the viewing and officiating and coaching and competitiveness of sporting events a lot more faster and efficient than we've seen in the past.
Right. This edition of the National Games is branded as Green Games. We are talking about the large-scale use of existing venues in Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau, and a spotlight on the green electricity coverage in some competition areas. And that means the electricity all comes from, green energy like wind, solar, thermal, or hydropower. And it's a great measure.
Great step, yeah.
Yeah, great step taken to, to tackle climate change.
Yeah.
And it's also about how a massive event in a major industrial nation is attempting to balance scale and sustainability. It's a big highlight at the Games in terms of hosting a mega event responsibly.
Yeah.
So Tianyu, tech-wise, anything else that is interesting to you at the National Games?
Well, yeah, Brandon just touched on a very interesting point, which is China has always been at the forefront of the application of high technology, high-level technologies in every aspect. And I would say robot taxis is actually a very exciting part.
Robotic taxis.
Yeah, robotic taxis, I'm sorry, is actually a very exciting piece of tech for me at this year's National Games. It honestly feels like something, straight out of the movie Back to the Future. Yeah, so more than 100 of these driverless taxis will be running during the Games and taking people between venues, hotels, the media center, and even the airport. So inside these driverless taxis, there is no driver at all, of course. And you just hop in, sit back, and just enjoy the ride. And it's actually surprisingly smooth too. So you can just relax or play some music along the way. So what's also cool about the taxis is that this tech isn't just about convenience. It's actually about safety and efficiency. So in real life, a lot of drivers actually work dangerously long hours to make a living.
Yeah.
So with these autonomous vehicles that have been tested on complex public roads, we're gonna see a safer and smarter alternative. So yeah, on top of that, is also creating a lot of new opportunities. So new types of tech and service jobs that didn't exist before. So yeah, I think the driverless taxis really show how technology is reshaping not just big sports events, but also everyday life in China.
Yeah, it's already what future looks like at the National Games this year. And also I noticed robots in the torch relay.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And most importantly, they don't tire. I think it's a great idea. All right, with that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information about the National Games, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.